Okay, lastly, we're going to talk about the lasso tools. And to do that, we're going to use a couple of the shell images down here. So I'm going to go ahead and blow up this mussel shell. At least that's what it looks like to me. And I'll get it big enough that I can work pretty well with this image. And we're going to talk about the lasso tool. So if you go up here in your toolbar, you're going to see something that looks like a lasso, and you can click and hold it and you'll see there are three different options. There's the lasso, polygon lasso, and the magnetic lasso. I'm going to show you a little bit about each one. So the regular lasso tool is one where you click and you drag and you don't release it until you are ready to be done with your selection. Oh, and see how easy it is to get outside of your selection? So this is one of those tools that I honestly don't use very much because I don't have such a great control over this with my finger or with my mouse, and quite often not even with a tablet pen. You'll see that really what I use it for is to make some kind of quick selection that I'm going to deselect, where if I needed to make a basic quick selection like this and then work with the interior of the selection a little bit better, that's more what I use it for. Okay, so you might feel more comfortable using it in other ways. I'm not that comfortable using the lasso freeform tool like that. So I'm going to deselect this, and now I'm going to show you another one that I actually like a lot better, and it's the Polygon Lasso. And the way the Polygon Lasso tool works is that you click and you sort of create these little anchor points, and I'm clicking in between each one of these, and I can that way control it a little bit better so that I don't have to worry about, it automatically drawing something. You can see that it's got this leg here, and I can move it wherever I want. And it's a lot more tedious sometimes to use this, depending on what you're doing. However, sometimes you can get a remarkably good selection. Now, I haven't even finished making my selection, but before I do, I'm not going to let up off it. I'm going to point something out. Look up here in the option panel. Okay, I'm just going to point at it where it says feather. In fact, I'm just going to hit escape. Where it says feather up here, I have it set to 1 pixel. Yours probably says 0. Again, this is probably something that got remembered from a previous setting of something that I was doing. So you could set it down to 0 pixels, but what I typically like to do is I like to set my things so that there's a feather of at least 1 pixel when I'm making selections so that I can mask something or copy it and put it into a new layer. And the reason is that it'll soften up the edge so it doesn't look like it literally got cut out with scissors. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take my Polygon Lasso, and I'm actually going to blow this up a little bit more so you can see the edges a little bit better. And I'm going to take my Polygon Lasso and I'll show you just how fussy you have the ability to be with that Polygon Lasso tool. And you want to make sure that you are not making your edges and corners too sharp, especially if you've got something like this where it's like a really soft and curvilinear edge. Alright, so you can see that this selection could take quite a while if I wanted it to. I'm going to go a little bit faster, and I might end up losing a little bit of the detail just for the sake of this demo. And you see what happened is I accidentally let up off of my my tool, and so it actually completed the selection because I ended up clicking somewhere else. Well, if this happens, that's okay. Don't be frustrated. You can do one of two things. You can either hold down your Shift key and start with a new selection, see the plus symbol on the lasso, or you could save this selection, okay, in case you accidentally lose it, because that's really frustrating when you spend a long time on a selection and then you lose it. What I'm going to do is I can go up to Select, Save Selection, and I'm just going to call this a new channel, and I'll call it let's see, Muscle 1. Or you could be more descriptive and you could say Muscle Top or something like that. I'm just going to say Muscle 1. And then that way, if you lose any part of your selection later, you at least don't have to start from scratch. You can go back to the last revert saved selection. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift, and I'm going to pick up where my selection left off, and I'm just going to keep on making my selection. I'll try to go a little bit faster now. And I don't want to show you how to make a bad selection because I don't want you to be making bad selections, but I might speed this up and tell you where I would expect you to do better. For instance, this part right here is a little bit sharp, but you could always come back and smooth it later. And I'm really kind of cutting the corners a little bit here. And you might think that this seems like a horribly tedious kind of selection tool, but in fact it really isn't if you consider how long it might actually take you to use a different tool to get basically the same effect. It might take just as long, if not longer. This tool is pretty reliable in getting pretty clean selections. So, in fact, let's just go ahead and cut that all the way up to the top. And I'm getting a little choppy around the edges here, so I would expect you to kind of make the rounds a little rounder and not so angular. And we're almost done here. Okay, so now since I added to that selection, I can't just click it here, but what I can do is this is all inside the selection, so I can just do this and I can close it, and you see where it's got the little circle. Okay, if I move it, it hits a plus, and here's the circle. When you see the circle, that means it's going to close the selection. And what it did is it added to the selection. So now I have something I could actually use, and it's a feathered selection, right? So I can copy this, and of course I didn't select the layer, so it's telling me that my selected area is empty. So let's go back to the background layer here, and I'm going to go ahead and copy. And then I did that with my key commands, and I'll just use this to paste, and then it pasted in place. So let me zoom out, and then I'll show you what it looks like whenever I move the muscle. You can see there that I've got that muscle, and if you wanted to transform it, like rotate it so it fits better, you can while the layer is selected or while the selection is selected, either one, you could go up to Edit, Transform, and you could say rotate, and then here you can sort of rotate it like that, however you want. Okay. Now that was how you could do it with the Polygon Lasso tool. There's also the magnetic lasso as well. In fact, let me just blow this up a little. Actually, maybe not quite that much. There. So let's go back to magnetic lasso, and magnetic lasso will find the edges of your object based, again, like on the difference of values. But you don't want to go too fast with this. See how it keeps dropping little anchor points? If you go too fast, it's going to drop too many anchor points. You can go faster in some areas, like around here, but you want to be careful. See, like that, I dropped an anchor point in the inside, so now it's got to pick back up. I'll just have to fix that selection, so don't worry about it right now. You can always go back. Don't think that you're always going to have the perfect selection from the beginning. Almost always you have to go back to refine your selections. And so this might be a little bit faster for you, for instance, than using that Polygon Lasso, but it isn't always going to be. It's really going easy and fast right now because the difference between that harsh white background is so distinctly stark and different. And then we get the little circle so we can complete it. It's so different than the actual muscle that, you know, it actually makes the selection quite simply. So if I want to come back here and fix this, I can hold down my Shift key and I can add to that selection and it keeps on trying to drag it back. So let's not use that tool. Let's actually go and click and go to the Polygon Lasso. Let's hold down Shift, and we're going to complete this just by clicking around here, adding to the selection, and there we've got a muscle. And let's see which one of those actually ended up looking better. So while I've got the background selected, I'm going to do my copy command again. I'm going to paste it again, and let's call this muscle 2, or let's call it magnetic muscle or something like that. Muscle magnetic, and we'll call layer 1, we'll call it Polygon muscle. Okay, so I'm going to take the muscle magnetic and I'm going to move it up here so that we can compare the edges. And you know what, the edges are pretty similar. We can compare it probably a lot better if we have it up here on top of the plate. And I would probably say that the magnetic lasso did a better job on this one, but they're pretty darn close, okay? So it just really comes down to which one you wanted to use. And in the book, you'll see that it shows you how to do this shell using the magnetic tool. Now, I don't know if you remember from a few demos ago, whenever we originally started talking about the quick selection tool, which is under the magic wand tool, we used this to actually create the selection. If you remember that, let me zoom back out so you can see it in context with everything else. If you remember that, I actually already selected it and I did a save selection. So if I go up to select and I say load selection, I can actually choose the shell. And I can say OK, and there's my selection, okay? Which is really terrific because I had already made it and now I don't have to remake it. So I could show you how to use the magnetic lasso on this, but I don't have to. So now if I wanted to go ahead and copy this layer, or copy this selection, again, there I did it again. Let's go back to background. I can say copy, and now I can go back and paste it, and then I get a new layer, and we'll call this, I don't know, conch shell or something like that. Just call it conch. It's not really a conch actually, but whatever. That's what we're going to call it for right now. And I can move that. Now you can see that we've got all of these different things on this plate, and of course they're not very well arranged, but you can see if let's collapse my history, and you can see all of these layers. I've named all of them so I don't have to guess at which ones are which. So let's say that I want to move that sand dollar over a little bit, and I think actually in the example in the book the creature is kind of off to the left and everything's in a different place, but whatever. The point is that if I wanted to, there's something else that I can do that you'll get to see again later in another demo when I'm talking about layers specifically, is I can add a drop shadow to all of these things.